Minneapolis, St. Paul, The Fan.
Taking the drive, lost his footing, but shovels it to Christie for an open three. Oh, they stay hot right off the dinger. A three. He's up to 8 points, and Minnesota has its largest lead at 54-38. With a jab step on Sanford. Bounces into the corner. Here's a three by Mitchell. Minnesota red hot. He's got 4 threes, and the Gophers up by 20.
Yeah. Quite familiar music. Today's to KFAN. Specifically, if you're driving around on a Saturday looking for some cogent, creative, and clever sports conversation with David Sinekin and Double T via In the Zone. And here's Trent Tucker, his basketball immortality, joining us in the 651 Carpets Plus studios. He's co-host of Saturday's In the Zone with Davey. 6th overall pick in the 1982 draft by the New York Knickerbockers was Trent Tucker, won a Super Bowl with MJ, and here he is. What's going on, Double T?
Things are good, man. How are you?
Things are well, thank you.
Good.
And when it's great seeing you again. And you know, we either will text or see each other outside of the studio, or I'll listen to In the Zone. It's just great having you here, man. With the way the basketball team's playing, the Super Bowl yesterday. You and Cindy were having a wonderful Super Bowl conversation when I was driving around on Saturday. And you know, so when I got into your bio, which I've done before. 6th overall pick in the 1982 draft. It's sometimes it's fun to like scroll through the draft, you know. And I mean, I think I got down to round 7, 8, or 9 or something like that in the NBA draft from 82. Mark Eaton, 4th round, 72nd overall pick. I mean, you think about basketball immortality. Eaton he had some immortality to him. And you can get a guy like that in the 4th round at the 72nd pick back in the day. Mark Eaton, man, he had a nice career, and good morning.
Well, you know, at that time we had 10 rounds. And if you were not taken in the first 2 rounds, maybe somewhere in the middle of the 3rd, it was going to be very hard to make a team, because most teams back then, even if they wanted to add a younger player, but they were not willing to part way with guaranteed contracts like some teams are today. So it was very hard to make an NBA team back then. If you got drafted in the 4th round, you had to bring something very special to the table. Because when I was drafted back in 1982, there were only 23 teams in the league.
Right.
So only 12 players per team. There were 236 some players, I think, in the entire NBA at that time. So, you know, you were very fortunate to have one of those jerseys at that time.
What did you think of the Super Bowl?
I thought it was a very entertaining game, especially as they got to the latter part of the game. And when players had to make plays here and there, you were able to see, you know, the superstars or the star players on each team step up and do what they were supposed to do coming down the stretch.
Did you were you, and I, you know, you're not a betting guy, but you know, you don't necessarily follow like point spread movements and money lines and things like that, but you'll fall into a point spread and know who's like favored and who's underdog. Yeah. Were you surprised the 49ers were favored in that game, like favored from a financial investing standpoint? Not
really, because based on how Kansas City, you know, performed throughout the regular season, and also how Kansas City got to the championship game. You know, even though San Francisco found some luck in their first 2 rounds as well, but it just felt like that San Francisco had the better team throughout the entire season, and so I could see why they were favorites coming into that football game yesterday.
And there, you know, there were some who know a lot about football, and they're just sharp with their angles and everything, with whom I was chatting up to the game, really Friday, Saturday, and part of Sunday. And I heard a common thread angle from a few of them. And it was apparent to them the 49ers were, quote, sitting on a big one, end quote. And so we talked it out a little bit, and I like the theory and I like the angle. It's you know, trash talking aside, Cindy's team got better as the season went on, even after they beat Dallas. I don't know about you. Nobody thought they were going to the Super Bowl. I mean, that would have been a super big shock. But that's not, I wouldn't call that a great team. That's a team that got better and got hot and got some things cohesive at the right time. So much respect from 9 to noon for what they did. But to be a team that wins the Super Bowl, they messed around with the Packers a little too long. Mm-hmm. I mean, they just like, we got you. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, at the end of the game, man, it started to get a little dicey. Well, they got out of it alive. All right, so what do you do next week? You get your bleeps kicked by the Lions the entire first half. I mean, it's lopsided,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to lose. And so then they come charging at the Lions, and they get them at the wire, but they needed the Lions to make some dicey decisions to get there. So the take was that they incrementally were improving, and with that extra time, the Super Bowl is going to be the best of their very best.
Right.
And then after watching that first half, the way the Niners were winning the trenches, D and O line, I'm like, wow, man. I got respect for that take because I'm looking at it right now.
Right.
I mean, they're offering, that's the best shot they can fire in that first half, yet they only led 10-3.
Well, and I thought, I understand, the point, the point after the touchdown was blocked. And everybody talks about, losing that critical point there. But I felt like that Christian McCaffrey's fumble, on that first drive, set San Francisco back. Because either you get 3 or 7 and you come up with nothing.
Right.
And to me, that allowed Kansas City to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And when you keep Patrick Mahomes in the game, at some point in time, he's good enough to make a play to make a difference.
Now you having won a title with Michael Jordan, does having Jordan or like a Patrick Mahomes, all right? So we're talking about the best of the best ever to best. Does that mean no matter the circumstances, the teammates, the ancillary pieces just always feel we have a chance because of that guy?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, because you're saying that if we do our part, whether he's struggling throughout the entire game, if we can keep the game close, within 7 to 8 points. I tell you a short story. Playing Utah Jazz one night. And Michael was having a horrendous game. First 3 quarters, he couldn't find himself. He was falling down. He couldn't make a shot here or there. So Phil Jackson decided to go with a small lineup, something he would never do. So he put 4 shooters. He put 3 shooters and Horace Grant around Michael Jordan. And all of a sudden, he kept penetrating and kicking the ball out to me and BJ and John Paxson. We started making outside shots. All of a sudden, a 17-point lead got down to 8. And with about 4 minutes to go, we all turned to him and said, okay, it's your time now. It's your time now.
Right.
Carry us home.
Yeah.
Because we knew once we got it to 8 with 4 to go,
wow,
we had the best player on the floor.
But that's selfless because, we've seen teams open up 20, 25, 27, and Popovich or somebody gets bored with the bid, like, you guys are out, just go ahead. And then all of a sudden they cut that sucker to like 8, 9, or 10 with, say, 4 minutes to go. And then Duncan, Robinson, a Jordan, Pippen, whomever would come in, and some will be like, what? I mean, we are the ones that got, it doesn't work. Thank you for your service. It doesn't work like that.
See, and we understood that he was going to close the game out. And we would just turn to him and say, you know what? All right, okay. It's time, take us home now. It's time to get back on the jet and go to the next city. And with 4 minutes to go, all of a sudden he scores 14 points.
Yeah.
And for the first 3 quarters, he was just having one of those games where the ball could not find the basket. But then all of a sudden, we kept the game close enough. Utah did not run and hide. They didn't take a 17-point lead to a 29-point lead.
And that's Stockton, Malone, those are the
Jeff
dogs.
Hornacek. So
Russell.
And so the game it would go 17 and it go to 12. It go to 14. And then once we got below 10 with 4 to go, now they call a timeout.
Yeah.
And we look at him and say, okay, all right, It's time to take us home now, boss.
Down memory lane we go.
God rest the soul of the late Dark Star, but
Down memory lane we go.
down memory lane we go with Trent Tucker. We're going to get to basketball momentarily. Dalton Reisner, very well-spoken, loquacious, analytical offensive lineman who last played with the Vikings, was on the segment before you talking about the Super Bowl. And I hit him with this, and I want to hit you with this. Do you absolutely have to have a Mahomes or Brady-like quarterback to get to or win the Super Bowl? Because he said you don't, like the Niners, but you better stock up at the right places all around it. Or do you just absolutely have to have that kind of player?
If you're going to be a dynasty, I believe you do.
Right.
And when you talk about teams, whatever sport it may be, when they talk about dynasty, they have that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And San Francisco, when they were a dynasty under Bill Walsh, they had that guy in Joe Montana. The Cowboys had that guy in Troy Aikman. The New England Patriots had that guy in Tom Brady. And now the Kansas City Chiefs, they have that guy in Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Yeah.
And Cindy's team goes from Favre to Rodgers. They get a couple of rings. You reference Bill Walsh. I mean, think about the Niners just lickety-split going from Montana to Young and what they did.
Right. And so Steve Young was a guy that was ready to take over and lead a talented team and keep them on track to win championships. When you're talking about becoming, that dynasty, as I just mentioned, you need the Michael Jordans, you need the Magic Johnsons, you need the Larry Birds, you need the Isaiah Thomas type players, is because time and time again and year after year, those guys are able to play at a certain level. They can keep you on track to become that dynasty.
And with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, you see sports clearly. The whole thing flipped for him at one point in the fourth quarter, maybe late third quarter. Okay, we have the interception early second half. All right, not the greatest pass in the world. But there were that long pass that he had early where one of the Niners just lost his mind and started looking up in the sky, and he was supposed to be the second guy to knock it away. Well, that was an errant pass. I mean, that I would bet if you run that pass back 10 times, I bet an interception 6.5. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it wasn't. It was a completion, but it wasn't a great pass. And then there were times where the rush wasn't necessarily all on him, but he got a little flustered. Like in the business, we say he was seeing ghosts, and he was afraid to throw it. He's going to run, take a sack, or take a +1 before he's going to give you a chance to intercept him. But see, there was also a side of it during the game, and I haven't watched the game back from a critical standpoint outside of that double pass, where I started to think to myself, man, he's running so much and he's looking to run so much. And now you got Rashee Rice, the receiver, yelling at him right in front, and it's I'm open, get me the ball. But I don't, I started to think to myself a little bit, man, and this is stupid and it's not a fact, but it's like, is he trying to win this thing on his own? I mean, because Travis and Taylor have gotten a lot of pub and cred for a long time now. Is he trying to win this thing on his own? I wouldn't say that would be gridiron gospel, but I've just never seen Patrick Mahomes fooled or that conservative that long, you know?
Well, they go through stretches, but San Francisco allowed him to become Patrick Mahomes at the end of the game.
They got tired, right?
And when they couldn't put him away.
Yeah.
And when you have a champion down or on the ropes, you got to knock him out. Mm-hmm. And San Francisco was not able to deliver that punch. And
so big.
All of a sudden, he says, okay, I've been here before. I don't have to think now. I'm just reacting. I'm just going to play football. And all my teammates are going to rally around me because they know that I'm good enough to make a play.
Yeah.
And when you have that guy on your team with the ultimate confidence that he can get it done, it just spreads throughout the rest of the group. And we all knew that at some point in time, Michael Jordan was going to make a play to make a difference.
With Phil Jackson, all right, basketball immortality, Lakers and your Bulls. But Andy Reid, okay, I don't know, simply because I'm just not remembering what Phil Jackson's demeanor was like. Well, let's just put it this way. Does a coach like Andy Reid and or Phil Jackson with such high-end success, so many years of equity of doing it a certain way, does that become what so many teams covet? having a leader who is the boss and also the surrogate dad, but also kind of, handles it, runs, that balance is not easy to run, being the boss and the surrogate dad. Reed does it as good as anybody I've ever seen. Was Phil Jackson like that?
They're very similar because, they both had that guy that they had a great relationship with.
Right.
But also he understood how to play for the team and not just for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Jackson really didn't coach during the game a lot. He coached in practice. He got us prepared to handle those moments on our own. If things were not going well during a certain period of the game, he wouldn't call a timeout. He said, I'm not going to bail you guys out. You guys get back to your principles, get back to your basics, and figure things out. Start over and go from there. But when you have that team unity and guys who are connected together, and winning becomes the most important thing. It's so much easier now to gel coming down the stretch and make sure that the basketball gets to the right person at the right time for the right shot.
So not for like the Chiefs, but not for everybody, I would imagine, is you got Travis Kelce relatively early in the game running up to Big Red, bumped him so hard.
Almost gave him a heart attack, right?
We almost toppled.
Yeah.
I was worried about that right hip a little bit, dropped his play card, whole thing. All right, so that's emotional. Right before overtime, hey, we just tied the game. We're going to overtime. We've been outplayed a majority of the game. And you see Mahomes and Rashee Rice yelling at each other. Yeah. And then they separate, and it's the bit where they turn their heads and you can see them bobbing because they're yelling about whatever. But that's okay for them. But if that happens, did you ever incur any of that?
Oh, the Chicago Bulls fought every day.
Really?
Right, but at the end of the day, we understood.
Somebody beat Michael in a practice and he didn't like it.
Right, we understood at the end of the day what was the most important thing.
Winning.
It was winning.
Yeah.
Winning. And you're going to have your disagreements here and there. I was open, you missed me. Okay, I missed you. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. But when we get back on the field, you got to leave that personal stuff to the side. Mm-hmm. Okay, I missed you. Mm-hmm. All right, you upset. Big deal. I'm going to find you the next time. Make sure that you're ready to catch the ball. So once you're a winning team with a championship mindset and a championship attitude, those things you forget very quickly because now the only thing you care about is winning the game.
And with Kansas City's first offensive possession in overtime, Rashee Rice left, Rashee Rice right, running with his hair on fire. I got fresh legs, man. You barely used me this whole game. Mm-hmm. And maybe they were yelling that. My bad. But he used him early, man, and it made a difference. So
because Patrick Mahomes is not a selfish player.
Yeah, I agree.
I missed you. I missed you. Okay, so that we can talk about it, but I'm not going to take this personally because the team is first. If you're open and you know that I'm going to get you the ball when you're open because your ability to catch the ball and make some yardage down the field is critical to us to putting someone else in the position to win the game. That's all we care about. Because at the end of the day, if we win, everybody wins.
Yeah.
When it's time for you to go in and get your contract and get your bag, you're going to get your bag now. Because
you've been around those hockey rinks with those kids a lot, haven't you, talking about the bag?
Yeah, because ownership now they have no more excuses.
Yeah.
Because you know why? We won the big one. We got the job done.
Yeah.
So they want to bring these guys back as much as they can because when you're lucky enough to win at the highest level, it is so much fun for everybody who's involved.
My man's on fire.
Trent Tucker.
Co-host of In the Zone with David Sinekin, 8 a.m. Saturdays, FM 100.3, KFAN. We hooked the Clippers this evening. It's a late one. It's on the road in Los Angeles. And after that one and a game they play on Thursday, well, here comes the All-Star break. And Chris Finch coaches the Western All-Stars. Last one for this segment. Then I want to get into some hoops with you after a short pause. The 3-point shooting contest and the slam dunk contest from what you remember when it started with what? Larry Nance and Larry Bird and Dee Brown and stuff like that. Do you enjoy it? Do you watch it? The All-Star festivities? I mean, the game can be ridiculously bad for long periods of time. But the ancillary stuff, your 3-point shooting immortality. You could dunk, but you were never in the dunk contest. Do you still enjoy those things?
I enjoy the 3-point the 3-point shooting contest. But I don't have a chance to watch a whole lot because I spend many nights now in the hockey rink.
That's what I hear.
So when some of those games are taking place or some of those activities are on, I'm either driving one kid to a game or driving somebody to practice. So,
Understood.
I enjoy the 3-point shooting contest the most.
And at those games, my friend Johnny the Mouse Mickelson, captain of the 83 Wayzata Club hockey team, the most formidable club hockey team in the history of the state, and he wore the C. He enjoys the conversations he has with you because he just loves hockey at all levels, and he loves seeing you at the game. So thanks for being kind to the Mouse.
It's fun. I mean, it's a whole new game that I've gotten to learn, but I see a lot of similarities to basketball. And they talk about breakouts. It's like forming the fast break.
Yeah.
Somebody gets
Odd man rush.
Odd man rush. You got to get out there. You got to play defense, and you got to be able to pass. You got to have some skill.
Yeah.
You got to be able to think your way through certain situations. And basketball is very similar. So it's a fun time for me.
How great was it being on an odd man rush with the Bulls? B.J. Armstrong, the point. On the left is Jordan. On the right is Double T. Well, with all due respect, the defenders, they might shade the way of 2-3, which means Double T gets to float out to the 3-point line. They head the way of Jordan. Wide open corner 3. Bam.
It's the greatest situation for a shooter to be in. When you can play with a guy like Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, who can break down the defense time and time again, and they're going to put you in position to do what you do best. I mean, it's like heaven for a basketball player. A guy who can catch and shoot. You love to play with a guy that can break down the defense and make the next pass.
The Timberwolves are at the Clippers this evening, which means we hook Kawhi. Oh, goody. Can't wait, actually. It's going to be a fun game. We'll get into that and more around the corner, but here comes Norda with the cash thing.
The Fan, along with the Big Ten basketball tournament, want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword grand, and you might win $1,000. The keyword is grand.
You listen to The Fan.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is time for the Wild File, brought to you by Pronto Heating and Air. Just go to prontoheat.com. Minnesota Wild out of the break. They get one, and then over the weekend, you got Marc-Andre Fleury, Penguins in town, trying to get a win. It's an absolute grind. 2-2 game. And who else but Kaprizov?
Ocean a drive. Rebound, they score! Kaprizov drills it home. The Penguins are arguing about something, maybe goalie interference, but right now it appears Kaprizov has put the Wild in front 3-2.
And that's the 3-2 winner over the Penguins. The Wild now winning both their games out of the break. And the day after the Super Bowl, that's where the real show takes place in the 702. Wild at the Golden Knights tonight. Puck drop shortly after 9 p.m. You'll get to hear it right here on your home for Wild Hockey, The Fan. That's the Wild File, brought to you by Pronto Heating and Air.
Basketball immortality, Trent Tucker. Wolves and Clippers this evening. Chris Finch, coach of the Timberwolves, joins 25 minutes from now for his weekly stop into the Love Covenant. Chris Finch shortly after 11 o'clock. And Double T, co-host of In the Zone with Davey right now. The Clippers have Kawhi, and he's all about title-winning clutch, as we talked about last segment, about just not panicking and having that clutch gene. Wolves at Clippers this evening. Through the course of his career, or maybe where he is now with Kawhi Leonard, what do you like about his game?
Well, Kawhi Leonard, I like everything about his game when he's healthy. Too. Yeah, I mean, when he
really dribble for his size.
When he's healthy, he's if not, he's one of the most complete players in the game for sure. And when he was in San Antonio, he was so good for their basketball team, and what he was able to do in Toronto. And he puts the Clippers in a situation where they can become one of the better teams in the Western Conference because he's so good on both ends of the floor.
And I texted Nordo last week because we follow the NBA pretty closely, and I have League Pass, and I'm watching the Clippers. I think they had a long road trip. They took an L at Cleveland, and the Cavs are good when they have Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Mobley, Jared Allen. Max Strus is a much better perimeter defender than I thought he was when he played with Miami. So they got a good little thing going there. They beat the Clippers. But the Clippers have won a bunch in a row and really have only lost twice in like the last 2.5 weeks. So I'm watching them a little bit. Final 6 minutes, they're closing somebody out. And they go with Harden, Westbrook, who comes off the bench, but Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. I mean, that's some star. If you can get that thing to work, that's some star power in the final 5 minutes of a game.
It's 4 Hall of Famers.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Paul George is the guy, if he stays healthy, he gives you that versatile small forward that can swing back between the 2-guard position and the small forward position. He's a deadly outside shooter. He can knock down the 3. And also he can post up and take the ball to the basket. So Tyronn Lue, he has a plethora of players that he can use in different ways to attack you on the defensive end.
And when Chris joins at about 11:05-ish, 11:03-ish, I'm going to bring this up to him because his opinion, A, matters more than mine, and B, he watches the nuance of it in a way none of us do. But the times I've watched James and the times I've watched Westbrook, they're playing differently. I mean, they're now, okay, they've been veterans who have thrown tantrums. They've been veterans who have said dumb things and whatever. But now they're even more veteran and closer to the end than the beginning. And I swear they're playing differently. I mean, Harden he's not pounding the ball for 15 seconds, waiting for the right pick. Russell is keeping his emotions more in check. He's selective. He's more selective with his shooting. I mean, if you can get those two to play complementary team basketball, I mean, they're going to be a problem for everybody in the West.
Well, and the head coach has been able to deliver the right message to the both of them to get them to understand they have to blend their talents in with perhaps the best player on the team, and that's Kawhi Leonard.
Right. And
both of those guys have bought in. Russell Westbrook coming in off the bench, he knows that now he's more important to this team as a bench player more so than a starter. I can come in, bring energy and effort off the bench. I can score some points here and there. I'm going to have a little bit more freedom to do some things on the offensive end. So then coming down the stretch, my role is going to change. I'm willing to adjust to that, become more of a defensive player. A guy, if I can knock down some open jump shots in the fourth quarter, that's going to give Kawhi Leonard a little bit more room to do the things he likes to do in a one-on-one type situation.
Double T, what now that you've seen enough of it, and this is the best season the Wolves have had in a while, Chris Finch, what do you appreciate about his leadership?
Well, his calmness is a key. When you have sometimes young and emotional guys, you need a leader who is calm in certain moments. But also you like to see him hold guys accountable as well. And that's very, very important when you're trying to win, especially in the Western Conference, and go and make a deep playoff run. And players have to trust that the guy who's in charge, he's going to make the right call at the right time. It's a tough position for any head coach to be in when you have a talented team. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you have to make that tough call with 3 minutes to go, the guy who's a regular rotation guy may not see the floor.
I don't know if you know Anthony Edwards or I don't, but it seems to me like Anthony craves and covets hard coaching. Because, I mean, you know this better than anybody, Double T. When in post-game press conferences or behind the scenes at practices, when you get after the best guy on the team, I mean, and multiple times, with respect, he's been like, well, that was an immature play. Yeah. And maturity needs to come here for Anthony in these areas. That's right. That doesn't go over well with all the gang, but with Anthony, he seems to embrace it and like hard coaching.
Paul, I've always said that the guy who is in charge is the head coach. He's the one that has the final say-so. The players are the players, for sure. You need star players to win. But if the star player is not doing what's right for the team, then it's up to the head coach to make sure that he's doing what's right. You have to hold him accountable because everybody is watching him. And I always go back, to this story about Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. The Chicago Bulls in the late 80s, they were a perennial Eastern Conference final team. They couldn't get past the Detroit Pistons. So Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf decided to make a change. They loved Doug Collins. But they said, hey, we need somebody now that can give us a different look, to take the best player, the best talent, and put him in a different situation so he can see the game differently. He can still be the best, but now it's going to put us in a situation where we're going to win a championship. And Phil Jackson had the right message to Michael Jordan. He has to convince him that by doing something different was not going to take away from his stardom, but was going to put him in an elite class where now he could overcome Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan was willing to listen. And we saw 6 NBA championships after that.
Right. And I'm sure Michael had an opinion in it.
No doubt about it.
So it was contentious, but the respect level is you're the boss.
Well, and you have to show me why this is going to be different and why this is going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are that guy in charge, you have to be able to paint that picture for everybody that you're trying to lead.
Amen.
It's because I got to get you to buy in to do this. If you as a leader is willing to sacrifice just a little bit, all of a sudden now your teammates become better. They become more confident. And when the game is on the line, you can trust them more, and they're going to put you in that situation where you can be a champion multiple times. That's what a team is all about. But the first person that you have to get to see that is the best player on the floor. And when he's willing to buy in, then it's much easier for the coach to make the decisions that he needs to make.
Last one, Double T. Appreciate you. Rudy Gobert. Is Rudy Gobert a throwback to centers from days gone by? I mean, there are not many like him this day and age of the NBA.
He is. He's a shot blocker. He's a rebound. He's a defensive player. He's a defensive player. He's not someone that you're going to come down and just throw the basketball to and say, go make a one-on-one play here or there. But he's a guy that can anchor, a conference championship type team, a deep contending playoff team, with a little luck here that can make a run toward a championship. He brings a lot of different intangibles on the backside of the defense. He allows the perimeter guys now to get up and pressure more and take some more gambles here and there and take away space from those perimeter guys because they know they have someone behind them that can protect the house. It's just like playing with Patrick Ewing.
I really appreciate you stopping by, and let's do it again more frequently, okay?
Anytime, man.
Double T.
Trent Tucker.
Basketball immortality. Chris Finch, coach of the Wolves, about 20.
On the Fan.
Welcome back. News du Nord brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, table games all year round, and we're just counting down the days. It's mid-February right now, but eventually live racing a couple months away. CanterburyPark.com for all event details. I want to start here with a couple of post-Super Bowl related bits. So just reading through things and sifting through the ashes. Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champs, first time since the 03 and 04 Patriots did such. But I saw this article that a fair number of the Niners players had no idea what the overtime rules were.
Unbelievable, because I'm seeing that same thing too right now and kind of sifting through it, and this is unbelievable.
And, here's, for instance, Niners D lineman Eric Armstead. I didn't even know about the new playoff overtime rule. It was a surprise to me. Didn't know what was going on in terms of that. It's reported Niners coach Kyle Shanahan, he said he and his analytics staff discussed overtime possibilities. But Armstead and the Juice Man, Kyle Juszczyk, both said that overtime strategy not discussed with 49ers players leading up to the Super Bowl. Here's Juszczyk. I didn't even realize the playoff rules were different. I assume you just want the ball to score a touchdown and win. I guess that's not the case. I don't totally know the strategy there. We hadn't talked about it, no. And, and then Armstead, well, they put it on the scoreboard, and everyone was like, oh, even if you score, they get a chance still? Meanwhile, and it goes back to that, I think that divisional game with the Bills, where it was just the absolute shootout of shootouts. Chiefs get that 13-second conversion and field goal with Travis Kelce. Oh, I improvised, just ran up. That's what Mahomes and I do. And then they win in overtime. Everyone was mad because the Bills didn't get a shot. Andy Reid been talking about this all year. Apparently, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we knew the new postseason overtime rules and implementing strategy and how to handle it. If we had won the toss, here's what we would have done."
Right.
So a little bit of confusion there on the Niners side, albeit Mecole Hardman ended all confusion with that game-winning touchdown there at the end of the first overtime period.
Right, and I have no problem conceding that I had forgotten the rules too. I mean, as I'm watching the game, thinking Niners touchdown, we're done, and I had to be corrected. So then I'm like, yeah, I knew that. But there are so many things to talk about up to the Super Bowl. Spending a large amount of time going over what the scoring situation is in the postseason per the rules. I mean, it's a non sequitur. It may be mentioned during the course of it's right there in the heat of the moment. That's when it has to be conveyed. And some Niners players are making it sound like even in that situation, they had no idea what was happening because now they'll have meetings and they'll have practices week up to the game, but the week right after the conference championship games, that's at least the Kansas City Chiefs did the majority of their work that week. So that when they get to Las Vegas, we got ticket clumps, we got $7.99 buffet clumps at Union Plaza, we got Siegfried and Roy trying to get into the first row. So they have so many distractions with which they need to deal. Kansas City, because I caught a really good Chris Jones interview on the radio last week where he was just laying out like what they did the week after advancing past Baltimore and how important it was. And, but that needs to be quick twitch. It's second nature now, pretty much for everybody, at least the farther along we get into it. But that just has to be quick twitch on the sideline. All right, guys. Now remember, you have so many coaches. I can't believe an ancillary quality control assistant, whatever, did not. Hey, now let's not forget this,
Yeah. Well, the only thing that got me, I was aware that there was a change in overtime where touchdown or not, the other team gets a ball. I didn't know what the rule was with the clock running out. Because at the end there, I'm thinking, are we just going to do another quarter?
Yeah.
Is there no urgency? Like, it doesn't have to be tied at the end of 15 minutes? Because Chiefs were just chilling on the ball.
Yeah.
Seconds, what was the touchdown? 3 or 4 seconds left in OT.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, and I think Romo then said it shortly before the game winner. Ultimately, doesn't matter. I'm like, are you going to use a timeout here? Like, what's going on?
I was tripping too.
Yeah, but ultimately it didn't matter.
Well, what would have happened had the quarter ended tied?
I believe it goes on.
Yeah, it goes on.
Yeah, and Vinovich he said, and maybe you just take people with the simplicity of their statements, we're starting a new game.
Yeah.
That's what he said at the beginning of overtime.
Right.
Probably should have just taken him at that basic, simple statement and understood it to be fact.
Same here.
Were you annoyed or think anything of Kelsey? I mean, in the heat of the moment, bumps Andy Reid? That was a talker really throughout and became, just a meme gold mine if you were following on Twitter.
Well, the thing is, you and I will joke about old people do this, old people whatever. I mean, you
can't sneak up on Big Red.
You bump old people, even just with a nudge like that. Big Red almost toppled. I mean, there was some weeble wobbling, but it didn't fall down. He dropped his play card. It was good googly goo. No, I have no problem with that when it is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Even if they lost, because that situation right there was polarizing because Big Red got bumped and almost toppled.
And at that time of the game, they're losing. There's frustration.
Yes. Yeah. And they can't find Kelsey, or Mahomes won't find or can't find Kelsey. It was Mahomes and Rashee Rice right before overtime. That was the topper for me. They just tied the game, and now the game's finally starting to get some cool plays, and it looks like it's going to be fun. I'm like, this has to be jubilance and jubilation and happiness and joy. And then you see Mahomes and Rice screaming at each other as they walk away, and they continue turning their heads to get in the last word.
Well, did you watch that play that I assume Rashee Rice was screaming about?
No.
Because you have the throwaway, and then you have the game-tying field goal. On the play, Rashee Rice cuts to the middle. It's a touchdown. The game is over.
Wow.
And the Chiefs win in regulation if he can find Rashee Rice there. So now, should Rashee Rice, as good a season as he's had as a mid-round, late-round draft pick, be going at the king about this as you're entering overtime. Maybe the wrong time to freak out about it. But it was absolutely a game-winning touchdown if Mahomes is able to find, and then you don't have to worry about the overtime rules. The game's just over, and they're winning the Super Bowl, which they did anyway. Wild are at it tonight, PA. There's still the street cleaners are out, removing all the confetti and the sequins and the dust and everything and the empty alcohol containers on the Strip because the Wild are at the Golden Knights tonight. The Wild have won 2 in a row coming out of the break. Dig that. They get the 3-2 win, I believe, Friday night against the Penguins in town. Marc-Andre Fleury Festival, the whole thing. Kaprizov with the game winner. And it's 2 in a row for Hines, though. But they got to go. They arrived in Vegas. I think the head coach said us they arrived. They told us on Friday arrived shortly before kickoff. And so they will puck dropping shortly after 9 right here on your home for Wild Hockey, the Fan. Maybe they can make it 3 in a row for Mr. Hines.
Game's over, you're right. If he just throws it between the hash marks to Rishi, I'm looking at it right now. And he split the linebacker so beautifully. The Niners are so tired. You got one flat-footed. Losing Dre Greenlaw when they did, because Greenlaw was playing his tail off, man. And that was like a big angle I had into the game, thinking about Travis Kelce and a healthy Dre Greenlaw. And
this Achilles thing, man, I mean, Kirk not exerting the most force he's ever exerted in his entire life.
Yeah.
Pops. Aaron Rodgers, that opening night bid against, I think, the Bills, where he's just spinning out of a tackle, pops, gone. Dre Greenlaw running onto the freaking field and toppling with the Achilles, man. It's not like I'm a I'm not a fan necessarily of Dre Greenlaw. He's a good player. But that was kind of heartbreaking just as an outside observer with what he means to that defense and how innocuously in some ways he moves, and now he's done, and he's got to deal with that all offseason.
Well, if I'm Rashee Rice barking at Mahomes, and you nailed it because I wasn't aware of this, about him, he was wide open on the play before Butker kicked from 29 and tied the game. He's wide open to win the game. They're going to win the game. He's going to walk in a Super Bowl champion. All right, so that's there. Mahomes did not have to go quick twitch. He went quick twitch. He could have waited a little more. And this is a rare Patrick Mahomes moment where he didn't have a swivel. He knew what he wanted to do. I'm not mad at him. I mean,
I think he's going to Kelce, right?
Yeah, I'm not mad at him for missing or not considering this, because if his mindset is, I have Fred Warner, who's a good linebacker, and he's good in coverage, but I have a single with Travis Kelce to win the Super Bowl. That's 9.5 out of 10 times.
Got to take it.
Well, yeah. Now, where he threw the ball was in front. Was a little questionable. But I can see Rashee Rice. You snipped it out. I mean, that's why he was screaming at Mahomes. And I'm going to guess Mahomes was looking back at him, being like, "Shut your mouth. Run your route, you'll get yours."
Yeah.
So then they come out in overtime after the Niners get it, and then Mahomes gets it. Well, Rice had a couple of quick hitters right there. He was running with his hair on. See, that's the nuance, and that's the nuance of sports that just really draws me in, and I really love, because whether people want to look at, I mean, there are metaphors for life that you see in moments like that. Overcoming conflict, sharing with those who aren't the stars. How do you handle yourself when somebody's yelling at? I mean, there are just so many, and by the way, it's intense and super hot, like arguments can get. And that the fact that he came back to Rice the way he did early in that first drive, in that drive in overtime, but that was cool. And
he helped his dog out. He went right back to him.
Yeah, you're
now
my
he
dog.
can spend the entire offseason going, I know where you're at.
Right. And
let's share iPhone locations. Always know where Rashi's at.
But I'm trying to win the Super Bowl. I got Kelce singled, and that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And every single time, because 6.5, like I said last week, if you take the 49ers with Reed now 31-7 off a bye, 86% winner, including the postseason. Mahomes, Kelce, and Chris Jones. If you take that group and that scenario 100 times, as an underdog, either plus 110, 115, or plus 2, you're going to scoop chips 85% of the time. And obviously you would have yesterday, but that plays into that. You give me Kelsey singled against any linebacker in the NFL 100 times, I'm scoring 85. So, yeah, I'm going that way.
Yeah.
Just off Rashid, though. When I'm home. I mean, it's like they weren't even done celebrating on the sideline about clawing their way back to get to overtime. Rashid's like, dog, I was open. Patrick's, I don't care.
Can I go handle this coin toss thing and we could discuss this later?
No, dog, I'm open. Throw me the ball. Well, don't call me dog. And I'm going to Travis 85 out of 100. Okay, so just shot that. And now, all right, we're good. And then they went out and won the Super Bowl. 11:01, we got to go. Chris Finch, coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, joins us around the corner on KFAN.